I think it's important to make a kind of a disclaimer when talking about artificial intelligence projects. That is that right now we feel in a kind of a dichotomy, whether you love AI or you hate it, right? And there is not a lot of in between. Much of the people is like focusing one side or the other, and I felt like quite like this myself. I at the beginning I was feeling fear. I was feeling anxiety. I still sometimes feel like this because of speed of the whole industry and how the territory, like the geographics of AI, are evolving so fast. But I must say that there is a need for an in between. Like there is a need of people working with critical perspective on artificial intelligence, and I think there are like two different ways to engage when you are afraid of something. The first one is to boycott it, like don't engage in any way with whatever you are trying to avoid or change. And the other one is to actually engage with it in a way that can be switch and change. And these two voices, this dichotomy of AI, one says artificial intelligence will save the world, right? Like this Silicon Valley perspective. We will not need to work anymore in the future. And the other one says, Harari, uh, AI will end us all. Like this will be the end of humanity, of all our capabilities. Like this will be the collapse of modern society. Um, I truly think that we need to figure out a way to like handle these two discussions, because otherwise you can feel like there is no discussion. It's just it's polarized, like the general discussion of most of the political topics right now. So feeling this lack of gray areas in the spectrum, we started to try to figure out what we could do from the studio, from our design perspective, and being very knowledgeable on how artificial intelligence, specifically generative AI, worked. We started to somehow explore how this could have a positive social impact for certain communities we were already working with. And we focused first on media literacy, that like it's a whole another topic. But after a while, after a couple of years, we said, what if we started working with generative AI, specifically in the setup of images, in the way we create new images, and the impact that this can have for ourselves. And then, because the knowledge that we have already with certain communities, we have worked for a very long time with a lot of organizations and institutions that have been defending the rights of a lot of migrant communities or people that have been displaced due to war, political persecution, or natural disasters. We started to say, what if we use this tool as a kind of space to actually reconstruct this cultural visual heritage that has been lost because of all these causes that I mentioned? With the first day, we generated an image from a memory of a person that was just orally explaining what she remembers. When I saw the image, it was nice. But when she saw it, you could see in her eyes like the recognition on that, right? Like finding something that for a very long time have been lost, have been only in yourself. And then somehow we discovered, or we somehow realized, was that what we were doing was kind of externalizing individual memories into something that could be uh, shared, that could be collectivized, right? And this had a lot of value, of course, for a lot of individuals. After discovering like this whole process of using these algorithms to generate images for people that have lost their visual memories, we started to say, what if we like create this use this methodology in other setups, like for example with people with dementia and Alzheimer. And then we started to do like some pilot projects with nursing homes and hospitals that hosted people with Alzheimer, like early signs of Alzheimer. So it was not so advanced, but those were people that knew that they were gonna lose the memory, that the things that they still remember, maybe in a couple of years they will not remember anymore. So they had the urge to actually explain those stories. After like series of pilots, we started to work with neuropsychologists and people from the world of academia, because we saw that there was a kind of therapy that is called reminiscence therapy, which is a therapy that is already used in nursing homes, and it uses um, old music and old photos from the past to actually trigger these very visceral emotional memories into the elderly. Um, and then we said, well, we could use synthetic memories to actually recreate something very similar to that. So that's when we started doing it, and we saw very good results from the first pilots. And now we are exploring it with the University of Toronto and the University of the British Columbia. And through this summer, we will create like the ethical framework as well as the accessibility report and how to make this tool like truly accessible for like different audiences. So this is a bit. It started as a kind of an experiment on AI to figure out a way that we could use like an artistic approach to deploy a technology, and then we discovered that it had like a lot of community-based potential. Last month, we opened the first public office for visual memory reconstruction here in Barcelona. It's hosted at the DAP, at the Design Museum of the city. The name came, so we are very much aware about the risks of artificial intelligence, deepfake, and all the potential misuse of this technology that is gigantic. Like this is this like one of the biggest challenges we have right now is how we deal with fake narratives, right? So we wanted to be honest and say, hey, these are not real, like factual things that happened in the past. These are specific things that people remember subjectively from like this individual perspective. That's why, because the image is generated from that subjectivity and from a model that is by itself biased and certainly also subjective, based on the database that it has been trained. We said that the best kind of name that we could use was synthetic because it was not organic, of course, and it was actually be using like a gazillion of images in which these models were trained of, and of course the description that the person was giving. So that's the main reason why we use synthetic as a name, as a kind of a early disclaimer that these are not real organic memories, but these are like kind of representations, symbolic representations that we can use as a vectors to go back to our own memories. Right? There is a kind of an ironic aspect in how we have designed the whole thing. And it was based, the whole design is based on the classical Spanish office from the 80s. And the name of the space itself is the Citizen Office for Visual Memory Reconstruction. Right. So it's we are playing even the communication itself, the kind of characters that appear in the communication, they look a bit from the 80s. Um, we have tried to somehow use humor to demystify artificial intelligence. We wanted to actually use technology that is very old. Actually, if you go there, all the screens are super old, like are from 90s computers and 2000 early 2000s computers, and like the whole office looks like this because we wanted to somehow say, hey, this is not state of the art technology. This is like a classical old school office from the city hall. And here, what is important is not the technology. What is important is the stories that you can narrate. It is playing with the idea of the archive because the space itself is an archive. So it have to somehow feel like an archive. And we have all these boxes, each of them somehow representing the 1 year of the memories. We have over 100 years of boxes, so over 100 boxes around, and each of them like books all the memories from that year, right? The memories that happened on that year from very different people. We have somehow created a kind of a prompt book guide, which is like for each kind of model, because we use several models. We started using DALI 2 as a very easy model to use, and then we evolved to image effects, which is, I think, part of Google. Then we are switching between our own models. We have trained our own models based on the archive of Barcelona, so it have a more a biased tendency towards the memories of people of the city. That before was a bit more difficult because, of course, if you ask for an image from Barcelona from 1923, probably in the database there are not a lot. And Barcelona is a good case because it is a quite well documented in terms of images city. But if you go to, I don't know, like any secondary city of Catalonia, it will not have a lot of images from there. So we kind of retrain the models to somehow by themselves be more biased towards the city we are working from. And then after that, what we did was like this prompt book that will always contain several modifiers. And some of these modifiers are like blurry, grainy, and like somehow words that make the image worse. That's why we use early versions of Stable Diffusion or DALI 2 instead of DALI 3, or we never use Midjourney because Midjourney is so good, so realistic that the people doesn't connect. It's about creating enough granularity, like this latency of the image that early models had is very good for this. People were saying these models are very bad, and I was thinking, no, this is perfect for the kind of work we do because memory is imperfect themselves. Like the way we remember things is not super defined. The kind of people is mainly like people from Barcelona, so mostly locals. There is an average age of 72 years old, so mostly elderly, but normally they don't come alone, so they come with their families. And that's a beautiful thing that we didn't expect at the beginning. That these young people bring their grandfather or their grandmother, and they do that together, which for me was, I don't know, like a beautiful moment that you can have with your family and talk about the past, things that you didn't know sometimes, and then, of course, create a memory together while you are doing a memory from another time from your elderly. So this is something that I love that has happened unexpectedly. And then there is people, yeah, like really from all ages, like even though like the average is elderly, like we had like kids, we had teenagers, we had like elderly people from like 40, 50s, 60s. There is this space of intimacy where people are talking about things that have happened to them long ago but that were very relevant. And most of the people, they want to recreate images that of things that never got documented. And we, of course, have pictures of graduations, weddings, and happy moments. But we don't have a lot of pictures of very important moments in our lives that were sad and were difficult and were, and and, I'm seeing a lot of people coming to actually generate images of things that they will not document because it was not kind of the classic thing to do. These were like the kind of things that a family will never document, but nevertheless were very significant for them. Were were moments that sometimes 50 years after, when you look back, they say this was important to me. This shaped who I am today, right? And that's why I think these images that we are generating them have so much power because they are truly backbones of the identity of so many people. It's quite a challenging thing. So, um, like the thing is that right now we are working mainly in Barcelona, which of course we work with a lot of migrant communities, but most of the audience and people that participate are Western, and and this clearly make the things much easier. Like it's much easier to prompt memories from people from Western countries and white people. Right? And this is mainly because the algorithms, how they have been designed, how they have been trained, are mainly with databases from countries, from Western countries, specifically from American countries, from the United States. So I think the last report I read was saying that 60% of the data that has been used to train these algorithms come from the US, and then 30% comes from Germany. We are somehow creating our own rebiases. So we sometimes we use specific images as starting prompts, and this kind of reduce the bias. And then we have like a certain prompt modifiers that we use also to find a way to actually generate certain images. And then there are images like image effects, for example. If you're using it and you are trying to generate images of someone when they were children, they will try to censor anything because they read the word children, and then they just like triggers a lot of alarms, which I understand. It's a total um, like it's a good safe word, but at the same time, for us that we are of course creating memories, is like most of the memories of people of elderly they want to create are from the when they were kids. So we have to figure out ways to use not the word children but kids, but not the word kids and sometimes another word. And so yeah, and then there is like this idea that I learned a couple of months ago, which is called prompt drifting, which is as the models evolve, you cannot use the same prompt to generate a similar image because the model have kind of been modified, right? So you have also to change the kind of modifiers and the words that you use to generate images constantly. And this kind of a semantic dictionary that we are developing right now, which gets somehow out of it have a caducity date, an expiration date, right? So we have to most of the time create new language for generating new images. It's a kind of a loophole. We are doing a dictionary, we use it for a while, then certain words get out of date, and we have to update it again. So yeah, I think it's part of the practice of developing something over a technology that is changing so fast. This is not a cure of dementia or Alzheimer or Parkinson or any kind of cognitive disease that is going against our cognitive abilities. What reminiscence therapy does, which is kind of the motherhood in which this methodology could be integrated, what it does is reduce the amount of cases of depression, and I explain you why. So the main problem is that whenever you get Alzheimer and you have a problem recognizing people, for example, people from your family, is that you start to get anxious because if you have been under control all your life and then you start to see people that you don't know, places that you don't recognize, you don't know how to unlock your phone, like this creates a lot of anxiety and kind of insecurity in yourself, in your own ability to operate, to navigate the world, right? And this creates as a side effect a lot of depression and anxiety on the elderly. So these therapies, what they do is they create like safe spaces, like they create these images, these spaces where they will recognize, because these are normally there are very important memories that they have generated. So when they generate them and someone that they maybe they don't recognize, they come with this memory and they will say, ah, okay, yes, this is a vector of memory for them to reconnect with them and with the rest of the knowledge. So one of the neuropsychologists explained to me and said, well, with Alzheimer specifically, a protein clock is built between neurons, so they cannot communicate between each other. So what we are trying to do is to create such a visceral impact that the electricity is so high that it finds another path to reconnect this part of the brain, right? And of course, like this doesn't solve the problem. The clock is still there. It's not the cure. But what it does is that temporarily enhance cognitive abilities, right? So you can, for a moment, reconnect and recognize someone and be like quiet and chill and relax for a moment, right? And this is very important for caregivers and family members in moments of distress and situations. I remember this patient in one of the pilots that we did, that she told me, Pau, uh, this feels a bit like finding your glasses in your head after searching for them everywhere. Right? It's like you have tried so hard to find something, but you can't because your brain cannot. And then somewhere, a bit of light, and then you reconnect. Right? So I think this kind of therapy is going in that direction. It's not about curing and solving the problem. It's about giving a better life to the people that are suffering it. I feel that the frame in which generative AI have been deployed mostly is from a market logic. Is how can we optimize, control, and substitute humans in any kind of situation? Why? To optimize, control, and substitute money, cash. So it's about economics, most of the framework that we have been using. And I think we need more people working outside of this logic. Like when we were developing this project, we were not thinking about revenue models. In fact, this is not a for profit project. And I think we need more people working in that direction. Like I'm sure that this project, if it's good enough, it will become sustainable in the future. And right now we are working with grants, with European funds, with grants from like tech companies and so on. And we are getting like all these funds to deploy, develop, and research. But the focus of the work is trying to solve a problem, a human problem, actually. It's not trying to make things more efficient. It's not trying to make things faster. It's not trying to substitute humans. It's not trying to make things cheaper, right? Because the problem in this case is not money. The problem is that in several spaces, such as these natural disasters, wars, or these political persecutions that trigger migrations, or due to like this disease that attacks our cognitive abilities, we are losing memory, which is part of our identity, and we are trying to solve this problem. And this problem is much bigger and goes beyond philosophically, ethically, morally, and ideologically speaking than just money.